child.
I'm talking about nation building, I'm talking about raising children.
Straight pride, man, woman, child.
I'm talking about nation building, I'm talking about raising children.
Straight pride, man, woman, child, yeah, straight pride. Man, woman, child, yeah, straight pride. Man, woman, child.
I'm talking about nation building, I'm talking about raising children.
Family, the backbone of the nation, along with spirituality, culture, and education. The Negro president supporting abomination. Get it? Abomination, this is an abrasion. The black family needs saving. Mental enslavement got you sexing like cavemen. Sisters that they gay friend, closer to playpen. Now you wonder why Jason is messing with gay men. To make our population double, gotta build some healthy couples. Black man and woman, bond strong as healthy muscles. Brothers find a hustle, love your woman, let her trust you. Some of y'all on the down low and feminine like Russell Simmons. Whether you pitching or you catching, you's a faggot. I ain't talking ERAs, homers are batting average. Y'all sodomites, pedophiles, fudge packers, lesbos, butchers and dykes and bull daggers. Straight pride.
My ancestors woke me up this morning. They say, son, you do know what time it is, don't you? I said, what time is that? They said it's wartime. So welcome to the war front, brothers and sisters. We have the esteemed honor today to come to you and bring you the premier scholar of the 21st century. This is the brother who's written more books about African culture and our current condition in 2016, year of the European, that we need for our survival than anybody else that we're aware of on the planet. And every single one of these books, how many books do you have, Elder?
21.
21 books. Every single one of the 21 books is a key component and piece of the puzzle that we need intellectually to put our people back together again and deal with the circumstances that we face in the 21st century. Today we specifically have a particular thing that we want to discuss as relates to the white sex assault, the homosexual assault, and get our elders' input on this. Recently, Mark Lamont Hill, who many of you are aware of, he's a media personality. He worked at Huffington Post. He's been on Fox News and various other news. Many of us in the past liked the brother, thought that he was speaking out on behalf of our community. But more recently, we know that in the summer he attacked, or he supported the attack of the Straight Black Pride movement by bringing on feminist/lesbian types to speak out against a movement that was just starting. Then in addition, it just happened within the last 2 weeks, our beloved and esteemed elder, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, made her transition January 2nd. And within 12 hours of her transition, we began to see individuals in the white sex, LGBT, homosexual community start to attack her legacy. And one of the individuals we were very surprised to see would take such a disrespectful slight toward our ancestor was Mark Lamont Hill. And he co-signed some of the negative things that were being said. We even had individuals in that white sex community calling her bees and dumb bees and all kind of horrible insults. And he was a participant in the process of defiling her legacy. Something we found to be tremendously disrespectful, and something that we have not noticed that we have seen from the homosexual community directly, or anybody in the community directly, when an ancestor of this esteemed status passes and transitions. Immediately when they transition, open disrespect of that ancestor. So today we want to have a dialogue with our elder to find out, to get some perspective on that, to know if we're right to be upset and believe that we should demand some type of response, an appropriate response from Mark Lamont Hill, who is a representative of a larger community that apparently seeks to disrespect ancestors who've done great work for African people. So with that said, Baba Baruti, are you aware of the situation?
Yes, I'm very aware of the situation, and it's extremely problematic for me, and it should be extremely problematic for African people, because this is an example of the level to which menticide has gone, the level to which menticide has invaded us, and we're willing to accept it, because even though he's the one that's saying it, and that is a major problem, of course, he's being co-signed by a significant part of the population. That percent of the population that has issues with our scholars who are speaking truth has grown dramatically. I'd like to say two things on this. First, when I'm teaching the children chess, we talk about pieces that are takeable, and the question is always, well, how do you get to that piece if you want to get to that piece? And the answer always ends up being you remove its protection. So like if I want to get to that child as a pedophile, what do? I need to remove it from the protection of his parents. And of course, this is another discussion, but society has removed parents, many parents even thinking that they need to protect their children, or thinking in terms of protection so that the children are more vulnerable than they have ever been. So, and that relates to Frances Cress Welsing in a particular way, and it's going to relate to other folks in a particular way as time goes on. I'm sure it'll probably relate to me, and it's probably going to relate to Neely Fuller, as we were talking about, and other folks, because that protection is gone. We also need to think about, relative to that, we also need to think about Kemetic culture in terms of when the discussion is about dynasties, and when Kemetic was doing exceptionally well and developing society in a very progressive, humane, righteous way, and then you had other times where Kemetic was on the downswing and they were easily invaded and easily, destroyed. When it was in high culture, if you will, you had a period of what's been called a period of strong kings, powerful pharaohs, Engu, as we should rightfully call them. But as that came to an end, then you had the rise of weak kings, of kings that didn't create anything, didn't build anything, didn't finish what was being done, and allowed society to become very corrupted. That was one of the greatest indicators, the moral corruption of the society. And this allowed other people to come in and do damage, because the corruption, of course, was occurring inside first. How is this related to Frances Cress Welsing? Well, first and foremost, we have had a period since really the 20s, 30s, if you will, maybe a little bit later, Renaissance period and on past that, we have had a period of strong kings and queens. We have had a whole line of scholars who have gone and rediscovered who we are as African people. They have dug up our past, and they have presented it, and they have made arguments that were not debatable. And they were scholars of great scholarship, if you will. So we had Dr. Ben, John Henry Clark, we had a whole slew of people, Chancellor Williams, and go back further than them, because they had teachers. As they have begun to go into the ancestral realm, then this is what this component of the quote-unquote community has been waiting for. They haven't been sitting there idle, they've been waiting in the wings. You got to look at this historically. Throughout the 90s, you saw in HBCUs the removal of revolutionary faculty all across the country. Throughout the 90s, in the historical white institutions, you saw the removal of revolutionary faculty, even though they stayed there more because they were tolerable children to be, entertain their children. But as these declines have occurred, as the people who are real scholars, who speak for us, who die for us, who live for us, have gone out of the scene, then the front line has been weakened. In a way, it's sort of our fault, because we got comfortable in our knowledge base. We got comfortable in our consciousness, and we assumed that it was understood that what they said was true. How are you going to argue with John Henry Clark? These are people who, to me, you can't argue with in terms of our story. So they knew better than to come on the scene, just like you knew better than to try to take that piece on the chessboard, because that bishop and rook was sitting there waiting for you. So you didn't touch those individuals. You knew that if you stepped up on the stage, you were going to get blown away in multiple ways. As John Henry Clark would say, I only debate with my equals. Other folks I teach. So as this has happened, and Cress Welsing is a very important indicator of the degree to which this happened, as that decline has occurred, as you've had the decline of the strong kings and strong queens, the homos and the promos and all other folks, and Negroes who are sitting in the wings, they begin to move into power. And it's not that they haven't been there. They've been there all the time. They were just too politically, I won't say too politically weak. they were just aware that they had better not come on the scene. Sort of like you didn't introduce homosexuality in the community as something that we should appreciate and feel sorry for, so that we should support, until it got to a certain point in our sexual insanity in imitating them. So you had to introduce sexual excess and then begin to introduce homosexuality and other things. And then as we were prepared, as we were reached that certain grade, then they could begin to introduce these other things. So now that you have had the removal of individuals who are clear, Jacob Carruthers, Ivan Van Sertima, as these individuals moved out, Larry Obadeli Williams, as these individuals moved out, then these, the weak kings, the princes, okay, that's about as much title as I'm going to give. These princes, they were able to come in and take over this space. They have been at work. It's not that this suddenly happened. This has been decades, many decades worth of work, waiting in the wings for the most powerful ones to begin to decline. And as they begin to decline, or I shouldn't say decline, as they begin to transition or be moved into spaces where they can't be as vocal as they could before, like Doc Ben, his physical conditions does not allow him to do, and he shouldn't have to do that anyway. He said what he needs to say. As these individuals begin to be removed from the scene, then it allowed them, because they were supported by Urugu. So that financial backing, those positions in academia, all the departments that had to do, particularly in the social sciences, they were backed and remain backed, strongly backed by Urugu. So as our giants begin to transition and be moved into spaces that weren't the center, these individuals begin to come in. And of course is that, if you will, push-pull factor. So at the same time, Urugu was pushing Negroes into positions. So it wasn't just us, these were being pushed into positions of power and control. So now that they believe that they are winning. So now that they believe that they are winning, then they can say things that they want to. It's sort of like when you get into a fight and you're not too sure if you can beat your opponent, and you keep your mouth shut. But once you think that you can, or once there's enough of your gang there, then you can start talking about their mom. Then you can start doing these other things. So it's like now they are so comfortable in the arrogance of the idea that homosexuality has won over Africans, that they can do things like lie about the origins of homosexuality being in African society and have a great chorus, great cheering, a great support for the idea of that insanity. So you have individuals online who I can't imagine having a following. This isn't that word following, but to have a following when you got a fag, a flaming male.
So don't arrest me. I say don't arrest me.
You know what I mean? Because they're using that to umbrella all of our people. That's why I invited them. I invite you so I can expose everything.
That's what's up, man. That's powerful.
Who is claiming to be speaking for the conscious community. Where you have people who want to talk about there was no such thing as the enslavement of Africans. All these things are taking on powerful positions in the minds, online, and in the classrooms, because our great kings and our great queens have transitioned or been moved into positions where their voices are no longer being heard. So when that happens, you can say what you really want to say about John Henry Clark to Chris Wilson. Because the European Jews, in their own way, attempted to do the same thing to John Henry Clark.
It didn't work.
It didn't work. It didn't work because we knew who he was and we loved him openly and dearly. But they can do that to Francis Cress Welsing because there's so much confusion amongst us. So many of us are listening to them. So many of us have been homosexualized. And she's saying that there's an issue with this, so it allows them to come in. It's sort of like that trickle-down disrespect where Europeans, of course, have no respect for Francis Cress Welsing. Never did, because they recognized the truth in her statement and they didn't want that passed on. But that trickle-down disrespect, if it goes against the European way, if anybody's speaking against the European way, now we really have the ability to say what we want to say, and nobody can do anything about it. And again, really, it's mainly our fault because the folks who are clear aren't politically organized well. The heterosexual community, if you will, isn't organized to any significant degree whatsoever. So you can have even small disorganized groups or individuals come in and say what they want to say and support what they want to support, and still have a platform, and maybe even have a larger platform, because the homosexual community now recognizes them as their voice, one of their major voices. So it's not that, and because we know his name, it's not because he's made statements or he supported the idea that Francis Cress Welsing should be dismissed. It's that we are so disorganized, and there are so many of us who don't want Africans to be defined along traditional African lines, don't want the values of Ma'at to be part of what we do and how we think, unless it's individually defined and I pick and choose what fits me. We want to disconnect from that. And the internet, of course, has contributed to that significantly, because most of us don't read. And I'm not trying to put us down, but most of us don't read. And the video thing has taken off, and now you have all of these clowns, all of these mental-sidal clowns, and that's the best I can do. All of these mental-sidal clowns who have become experts on what it means to be African. Everything from athletes who have no business speaking about, you know, who we are, entertainers who have no business speaking of who we are, to just plain old clowns from off the street who have no knowledge base whatsoever, but who are able to get a following because they're charismatic, because they're eloquent. And Jacob Carruthers really worked that word eloquent when he explained, you can be eloquent and be evil. You can be able to say things so well that it'll attract people's attention and will bring them to you, but your statement can be evil. Your statement can be bad. So we have a lot of eloquent people who now have the stage because they have a phone camera, you know, and they can put it on YouTube and go with it and
they know how to get a following, so they may be more charismatic or technologically sophisticated.
Absolutely.
What is the responsibility of those of us who are centered in our Africanness, are serious about African survival, growth, and development in the 21st century and beyond, who are clear on the, lack of a better term, heterosexuality of African history and African current and African future, and see what is happening with Dr. Frances Cress Welsing as a woman, as an elder, as a statesman, as a scholar? What is our responsibility to her when we see her legacy being attacked?
Well, you can't stop insanity in an insane reality. That's going to happen, and it's going to be rewarded in that society. However, that doesn't mean that we have to be a part of that. Our job is to make sure that warriors are clear. Our job is to make sure that our children are perfectly clear who she was, what she was about. So, like at Akabe, we spent half a day explaining what Frances Cress Welsing was about, what her theories were about, what her ideas were about, what she was about. So we have to make sure that within our circles, because the idea that Malcolm X was a homosexual, that's out there. For those who don't understand, but we have to make sure that our children know. Frances Cress Welsing was crystal clear. I don't necessarily agree with every single solitary thing that she said, and if I did, something's probably wrong with me. I have a little issue with the idea that people need to wait till they're 32, 34 to have children, even though I know that may work now. I think that we need to focus more on changing the child rearing method so that we don't have to wait until they're that old to form families. But our job is to make sure that we are clear, that our children are clear, that warriors are clear, that we are uncompromising in our stand and our love and appreciation for her, period. Because it's like, you can't make anybody African. we can go around trying to put out all these fires, but all we really need to do is to make sure that those who are clear make statements, make their statement, and go on about the business of being the best example of a warrior possible. What is the African proverb? What's the best thing you can do for a fallen warrior? You pick up his spear and shield. Right. For her, we pick up that spear and that shield, and we keep fighting, and we make sure that her memory remains. We continue to call her name every opportunity we get. We continue to call John Henry Clark's name every opportunity we get. We continue to call Khalid's name every opportunity that we get to the children, so that they are clear as to who these people are and what they did for us. They change, these individuals change the way we interpret reality. They gave us an understanding of racism, of people who are aspiring to white supremacy, of the importance of our melanin, who we are culturally. They gave us this. This has to be defended in our spaces. Okay, I'm not going to go into a Klan rally and try to defend Cress Welsing, but you better believe if it's in something that we do, like at the event where the sister from who was talking about we need to consider.
Oh, we were in the Straight Black Pride movement event, and she was Black Lives Matter coming in there talking about.
She needed to go.
Okay.
She needed to go. And any ideology needs to go. I was talking to a student the other day, and he introduced an idea that made no sense in an African environment, and I told him, you know, don't bring that nonsense in here anymore. And I asked him to think about, if this was a Negro school, would you allow me to teach here? Absolutely not. So we cannot allow those ideas to come into this space with any validity. We have to make sure that we are clear in our spaces, that our children are clear in our spaces. We can't get frustrated about what other people do. We need to be aware of who said it, because we need to know who the enemy is. And of course, along with that, something that so many of us do so regularly, once that individual identifies his or herself with Yurugu, we need to never forget. We'll forget. We need to never forget. So if you compromise, and let's say you decide that you want to, you're going to wake up and come back. Well, you've made your position clear. So if you want to come back, you remain on the exterior of that circle, proving for the rest of your life that you are about the business of empowering African people, because you should never, ever again be trusted with the mantle of power within the center community. Ever again. So these individuals who are making these statements about Cress Welsing, and there are a lot. These individuals who are, and not, you know, not like the whole world, but there are a lot. These individuals need to be identified. They need to be critiqued within our circles. The children need to know who they are, and they need to never be allowed in. Again, whether we, and the elders say we are winning, so I'm assuming that we are winning. I'm operating on that understanding. So when we win, don't try to come and play the race card that because you're black that you're part of this. No, you made yourself clear. You made yourself perfectly clear.
Stick with your team.
Stick with your team. Stick with your team. Absolutely. And we need to stick with our team. And that may sound to some people, oh, and not the racist thing, but that may sound a little harsh. These are harsh times.
That's right.
These people are trying to, you couldn't even do a program in New York where it was supposed to be done, because that's not harsh.
We had to switch events.
Yes.
Let me say something, because it goes right to what you're saying. You know, one thing I noticed about this Mark Lamont Hill situation, and I find it really interesting because I see a very scientific approach that the Europeans are using to do this. Mark Lamont Hill has one place where he wrote up about how Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, he wants to throw out, he took a picture with Minister Farrakhan, but then he wants to say in the write-up online, oh, Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad was my mentor. You know, I mean, but now at the same time he's saying that. So now he's invoking people. It's like what you're saying, our space. That's our space.
Yes.
And we know that Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad I think we would all agree universally that if he were here and heard somebody disrespecting Dr. Weldon in the interest of promoting homosexuality, he would have been livid. Matter of fact, we don't even know somebody would have done that because he might have walked up on him.
And he was one of those who transitioned.
One of those who transitioned and who now they believe that they have, he's not here and that Vanguard's not here, so they can do that kind of thing. So I find it very interesting what Mark Lamont Hill is doing, because in 1 second, one voice, he's saying Mark Lamont Hill, which put saying Dr. Khalid Muhammad, which puts him in our space intellectually, or people think that. Then he comes out and promotes homosexuality. But if you like him because he said Dr. Khalid's name, then you think he's one of yours, so we become confused about what's happening. Then he can attack Dr. Weldon in her passing. How do we deal with that kind of confusion?
The creation of confusion so that people who are walking in the direction of consciousness won't know where to go.
Yes.
And they will be certainly confused. I was thinking about that as you were saying that you see so many people who will try to claim other areas where they see people are at, other areas of truth, other areas of scholarship. And I forget people's names because I don't want to remember the flamer who's in quote unquote conscious movement.
We call him Gay Z.
Gay Z, yeah. So he put out that I taught him. And of course the warriors who knew went ballistic. But of course we had to realize two things that need to be understood about that. Some people heard that and that's all they're going to hear. So they're not going to hear the correction. Right. So he put that out there, which benefits him. Not that I'm some great, but that benefits him. He's not going to call out names that do not benefit him. The second thing is that you end up absorbing the goal of the quote-unquote conscious homosexual movement is to claim dominance over what it means to be African. That's the goal. So then they can eliminate you. Then they can eliminate NEI. They can eliminate us because they become the spokespeople. And how do you do that? You claim everything that has to do with being African as yours, or you systematically dismiss it in such a way that it's irrelevant. So Francis Cress Welsing will be irrelevant to them being able to claim that. That's something that I've been looking at for like the last 15 years where there is a systematic attempt either to assimilate, co-opt that which is really revolutionary and African into that which is not, so that which is not can claim to speak the truth for the revolution. This is a perfect example of this. When I was teaching in college and there were like 2 or 3 other revolutionary faculty there at the time when I was leaving. When we left, the students came to me and I discovered something interesting. The Negro in the history department had become the revolutionary at Morehouse because he had eliminated
the revolutionary at Morehouse.
Right. So he was now that's the same thing that's going on now in the movement. So you have people who are claiming to be Malcolm X this and who are claiming to be conscious that. So they become the spokespeople of what it means to be African, so then they can redefine African as homosexual.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, these individuals are some of the greatest threats to the work that we're doing.
Absolutely.
Because they see us doing this work in our committed reality as the single thing that they need to eliminate in order to make homosexuality normal among black people.
Absolutely. You remove any adversity to your politics, and it is a political movement. I don't care how else you want to say it. It is a political movement. If you remove the opposing party,
then you're the last party.
Then you're it. You're the only voice, the only one that's heard. So you do go through the process of eliminating. Some of them you can, and you get to that certain point where you have made so many gains that you can begin to even dismiss some publicly as powerful as they were. So you can dismiss a Francis Cress Welsing and not worry about the response or the reaction because your following is so large. And
because the opposition is not organized to crush you or have response adequate to make you say that wasn't a good idea. There are no consequences. There's no, you can't look around and say, I can't go to the black community and speak anymore because the people don't want me to come, or my job now, so many people have written letters there, or I can't walk in the black community without people coming up and saying, I don't like what you said. So there's no consequence to it, so they can do it now.
No consequence. No sense of accountability, which Aaron Clark talked about. He still has his job, right?
He does. And speaking of that, in terms of attacking Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, I have a theory, and I could be wrong, but I want to ask you.
Okay.
It happened so fast, and it's been so consistent. I've watched a number of different people. I've watched Greg Kimothy Carr come and say a few things here or there. I watched Mark Lamont Hill say some things. And I watched the open homosexuals come out and just directly attack her. It appears to me that there's a understanding among them that if we can eliminate the people who focus on racism and white supremacy, particularly Dr. Welsing, you know, Nellie Fuller, that they were really strong and intricately substantial in making the words racism and white supremacy, words that identify the problem. If that scholarship is made to be taken as not serious and irrelevant, if racism and white supremacy is not the problem, then the behavior that black people participate in, which has been linked to white culture, which is homosexuality, is also not a problem. So that my theory is that they have already targeted certain people, like the Dr. Welsings. When they pass, we're going to discard their scholarship, and we're going to slander their scholarship to remove it so that young people coming into consciousness won't get the ISIS paper. They'll look at it, or if they do get it, they'll go in with a slant that this is something that's not scholastic and not accurate, such that if this is not true, then homosexuality is acceptable, because if this is true, of course we know homosexuality is not acceptable. I believe it's targeted, it's engineered, and it's intentional.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree. And of course, also as a logic that works with that, that would mean that those people who they are not slandering when they die were not an issue for them. Did not go against this issue, did not really truly have an issue with aspirations to white supremacy. That wouldn't be a problem for them. Like those that understanding that those people who are attacked are seriously the problem, and those people who are not. I would agree 100%. If you are trying to destroy an enemy, then you target the generals who are most effective. You don't necessarily target all of the generals. You target those who are most effective against you, most effective in motivating the soldiers, who are most effective in their military thinking, who know the most, who are the most diametrically opposed to what you are, who understand, like Dessalines did, that no white folks, period. You applaud those who wanted this quote-unquote humanity, like Toussaint. Not to say that Toussaint was a beautiful general, but his politics relative to Europeans were a major issue. But you don't hear anybody talking about Dessalines. And that's also part of the attack, not just openly condemning someone like Frances Cress Welsing. You silence any discussion about them.
And you raise up these other people who are more in line with you.
Right.
So they become the great scholars. Right. So I'm hearing now Greg Kimothy Carr's name brought up universally amongst the homosexuals as this great black scholar. But I'm also watching his relationship to the homosexual agenda and to the homosexualization of African institutions nationally. And I'm putting the pieces together and I'm going, okay, those players see us. I think it's important that we start to see the players as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not attempting to defend anything. I don't know anything about that.
Absolutely.
But that, in terms of a general logic, does apply. If the homosexual community is supporting you, it's sort of like if the city of Atlanta says that we support such and such for mayor, or the white constituents in Atlanta, so we support this black person for mayor. Well, immediately red flags ought to go up all over the place, automatically. And if they are dismissing the person, then I need to investigate and see what this person is saying that I need you know, what they're about, that's a problem for them, what theory that they're dealing with. But I want to repeat that point about the silencing, ignoring, ostracizing, if you will, of individuals, because it's not just those whose names they call out. Okay, because in even though those individuals may be the most visible, which is part of the reason why, beyond the theory of you know, your theory, but you have a lot of individuals who are not allowed to do, you know, radio interviews, not allowed. You're not going to hear about them on TV. You're not going to hear their voice. You're not going to hear their names, because that's an attempt to keep people from knowing that they exist, which is also an indicator of the strength of their knowledge, the strength of their dedication to African sovereignty. So
that people have to get lucky to stumble upon that information, because it's being hidden, because they know that these are the people that, if our young people hear this, will gravitate towards and will give more resistance to those attempts to destroy our African identity.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to use myself as an example, but I can't imagine anything I've written ever making it to the New York Times bestseller or anything, you know, at the lowest levels. Okay, that's not something that I would expect, and I'm always pleased and always brings a smile to my face when I'm somewhere lecturing and somebody's at the table mad. I mean, visibly mad because they didn't know about this book, or they didn't know about that book. You know, and they're really upset because they consider themselves to be part of the conscious of the center community, and they say, "I never heard of you. I never heard of any of this." And then they're like buying 5, 10 books.
And let me say this, and I think we're gonna wrap up. But I think this is really, because you just said something. For years, ever since I first read your book, and I'm being honest. You know, I'm a very honest person. Your book, Homosexuality and the Effeminization of African Males. You remember I told you this. I had begun the process. I was on pretty much finished writing my book. I had no idea that this brother existed. I don't know how I didn't know. When I read that book, literally, I wasn't even a quarter through the book when I said, if I had known this book existed, I would never even have begun to think about writing a book on the subject, because of how thoroughly it was, the topic was dealt with. My issue is that we have black colleges and universities all around this country, other forms of scholastic, intellectual circles in this country and abroad. Everywhere I go, I tell them, if you have any collegiate type of thing going on, this is the work of scholarship that is the African Bible on sexuality. And I have not seen the support from people who are intelligent enough to be able to identify the value in that book and how it should be disseminated amongst our youth in collegiate circles, where they have the time to read it, evaluate it, analyze it, and give feedback on it, positive or negative, to be able to challenge the standard thinking that we're getting. I really believe that we have one of the greatest deficits we've seen in terms of intellectual courage in the African world community.
Agreed. And it's, to me, it's a two-pointed statement. First and foremost, it speaks to the politics of academia, the politics of knowledge, what is worth knowing, because well, I'll put it this way. It's sort of like you're calling our children stupid. Okay, you got all of these students in liberal arts school, blah blah blah, and you're calling them stupid because they're not intelligent enough to be able to read something and see that it's baloney. So you're selecting what they're reading as if you are, and you're saying this, right, but you're not. You're protecting yourself. That doesn't, the politics of it does not really surprise me. What surprises me is that of all of my books, Homosexuality and Feminization of African Males has sold more than any of the other books. I expected Complementarity or Sappho, maybe Kebuka, but it sold more, and I thought that it wouldn't because it's so thick, and the title. I said, folks are immediately going to run from this title, so I'm putting this book out, and you know, a few people are going to get it, and it'll help a few people. I have really been surprised at the reception of this book. And I can talk about, I know people talk about it, I can tell when Professor Griffith's talking about it, because sales spike. You know, I can tell when you're, because the sales are going to spike. But
y'all hear that? Homosexuality and the feminization of African males. When you see this video, we need sales to spike.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think it's a very important book. It's 9 years worth of work, and it started because of what I was seeing and could not believe, and what I was hearing. And I'm hearing folks trying to place the origins of homosexuality in traditional African society, and my immediate response was no, but I hadn't done the research yet. I said, no, that doesn't even make common sense. And then when I did the research more and more and more, it's saying, no, it's not possible. No, it's not possible. No, it's not possible. But when with the book's presence, you still see people who are afraid. Just like there are certain college campuses that, particularly HBCUs, that Khalid would never be allowed on. Even though he could be allowed on some of the white college, he would never be allowed on the black college campuses, because you have Negroes who are protecting the minds of the children who they are trying to raise into Negroes, who they are trying to make sure that none of these ideas, because if the ideas were bad, if the ideas were not worthy, and whatever the book is, if the ideas were weak, then you use that book as a foil. You use that book as something to laugh at, to show them, look at this stupid scholarship, look at this dip right here. Okay, you would use that in that way, and then you could show through that work that this is more phenomenal, that you really need to be focused on that. But they're afraid to touch it. They're afraid to talk about it, and it's not just my book. They're afraid to deal with anything that deals with the topic whatsoever. So it's not just my work. They're not going to touch your work. That's one of the reasons why they're not going to touch Frances Cress Welsing. That's one of the reasons why when she transitioned, it wasn't because her work went up in value. They don't want people to touch her material to go read it, because when somebody transitions, people want to go and find out what they were about. So suddenly the prices of her work skyrocketed. And part of that was, of course, you want to make as much money as you can off the conscious community because you're trying to drain it of resources. But a part of it was also, we don't want you reading it. And we know only fools are going to come out here and pay $200, $300, $400, $500 for a $20 book. So it's like that the politics, that fear and ignorance strengthen a politics where people know if Europeans haven't said, or Negroes haven't said that this person should be read, then even if I see the book, I'm not going to waste my money on it because it's not validated by them. And it may put me in a position where I have to think in such a way that I have to go against that. Negroes don't want to go against that. Slaves don't want to go against that.
Well, brothers and sisters, there you have it. Can't blame the irritated genie in Southeast. We now have the premier scholar of the 21st century, Baba Mwalimu Baruti. And of course, we can't speak about Baba Baruti without speaking of Mama Ya Baruti. Just as you can't speak about the master teacher, Astra Kwesi, without talking about Mary Rakwesi. And this is what Warner Horizon and the Straight Black Pride movement can bring to you. We can bring you the wisdom of our grand elders while they're here, living, live, and in person. Not to wait for them to be gone to say how much we love and respect and honor them, but to listen to them while they're here, while they can give us the information, they can give us guidance, even correction, and share with us relevant things on the African battlefield for the future survival of African people. So on behalf of Warner Horizon and the Straight Black Pride movement, we want to thank you, Baba Baruti, for that wisdom. And we're going to do everything in our power to ensure that we not only correct this Mark Lamont Hill situation as an example to that other community, that we will not tolerate this level of blatant disrespect, but also as a thank you to our sister and great mother and our goddess, I said, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, for coming and putting the pieces back together to help us intellectually figure out the direction we needed to go in the 20th century and beyond. And so that is who we are. That is what we do. We'll continue to do this work. We love you. We'll see you on the battlefield. Warner Horizon.
I'll show you the baby photo.
Gotta love it.
I appreciate you.
These faggots jumping out of order, breaching black power borders, marching with they foul supporters, dressing wild, loud, and horrid, talking about even when he was a little child, we saw it. He would dress in blouses, tuck his phallus, it was kinda sordid, horrid flower, not a florist or botanical, for fans that choose to hear it allegoric. He threw it and he caught it, they lip kissing, really clicking, okay, that was porous. They broke the levees, now we're fag flooded like New Orleans. You cheering Caitlin, that freak should've stayed a man, he blowing trombones like Nick Hudson, let me zone on the It's Mayaka Entertainment. We just wanted to give him a taste of it. Let's get out of here.